All right, we're good. Hello there. Welcome to Vince on a Thursday. It is good to have you with us today. We do have a big show for you today. We will be looking back at everything that took place at the Annunciation Catholic Church and School in Minneapolis, Minnesota yesterday as a trans killer, another trans killer, opens fire on children. And then the left instantly both lied about it and then attacked Christians for praying in the wake of it. I've got all of the details ahead and what they mean for our country and how we can navigate out of this. That's all ahead on Vince. It is very good to have you with us, as always. I'm grateful you're here. This is the best audience in media. Thank you so much for making this show possible. And our sponsors do that too. They make this show possible. I want to thank Fatty 15. Fatty 15, C15 from Fatty 15 is awesome. You know, if you think about aging at all, and all of us as we get older, you can't help it. You have to think about aging because your body starts telling you all the time, hey, you're getting older. Well, there is a way to address this and to feel so much younger. I'm excited to share with you something called C15 from Fatty 15. It's the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in more than 90 years. Fatty 15 co-founder Dr. Stephanie Van Watson discovered the benefits of C15 while working with the U.S. Navy. And based on studies, we actually know that when our cells don't have enough C15, they can age faster. Trust me, do the research. I did. I looked it up. It's true. And Fatty 15 can help you repair and protect age-related damage to cells and help activate pathways in the body that repair mechanisms that support our overall wellness. Fatty 15 is science-backed, award-winning, vegan, 100% pure C15 supplement. And refills are definitely shipped right to your door. They're shipped right to my door. And I love it. I take it every single morning, right away, first thing when I get up in the morning. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize our C15 levels and help support our long-term health and wellness, especially as we age. You can get an additional 15% off of their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/Vince and using that code Vince at checkout. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Did anybody else's email just sign out the second you need it to be available to you? This, whatever. All right. Yeah. Anyway, that just happened to me. It is good to have you with us today. We've got some very important news to get to, and this comes to us out of Minneapolis, of course, where we find out that the Minneapolis school shooter took place yesterday is a guy by the name of Robert Westman, who decided that he would go by the name Robin Westman, and did that with the backing of his mother a couple of years ago. In 2019, she began the process of applying to have a name change for the guy. And then by 2020, the state of Minnesota signs off on this thing and says, oh, yeah, sure, now you're a girl called Robin, when, of course, it is impossible for that to happen. Your body's not a mistake, and if you think it is, you are suffering from mental illness. That's what's going on here. And that mentally ill human being decided to take up arms yesterday against a Catholic school called the Annunciation Catholic School. And just to be clear, the Annunciation, for those who don't know, the Annunciation within the Christian faith, it represents the announcement by the angel Gabriel to the Blessed Mother, to Mary, that she was with child, with the baby Jesus. It was an announcement that new life was being brought into the world. And if you include that detail in our recitation of what took place yesterday in Minneapolis, it really does go to show you that there are spiritual forces at work here, that there was something deeply demonic about this attack on children yesterday inside of that Catholic church, as that young man launched an attack, killing children, taking them down in the early stages of their life, in the very place where a Christian church is celebrating the emergence of life, the creation of life, of Jesus Christ himself. That's one of the many lessons from yesterday's attack in Minneapolis. And the New York Post describes yesterday's event this way. They say the deranged gunman who slaughtered 2 children and injured at least 17 others at a Catholic school in Minneapolis has been identified as a transgender woman. In other words, a dude with delusions. as disturbing videos posted by the shooter show a handwritten manifesto and kill Donald Trump. And for the children, scrawled on the gun's magazines. Robin Westman, formerly Robert Westman, opened fire through the stained glass windows of a church at the Annunciation Catholic School, where he attended, during a celebratory back-to-school mass filled with children around 8:30 in the morning on Wednesday. Yeah, look, this is not uncommon. In fact, Catholic schools all across the country routinely have mass for the kids in the morning each week, oftentimes on Wednesdays, just smack dab in the middle of the week. And as a part of the education that the children are receiving, not only are they learning reading, writing, and arithmetic, but they're also developing the relationship with God. That's the whole point of attending this Catholic school. And a part of that process is to go to church. And these kids were in church. And surely if they're in the school mass, what that means is it's the entire student body attending an 8:30 mass, or at least a mass that began sometime in that vicinity. And by 8:30 Wednesday morning, yesterday morning, the shots are ringing out from outside of the building. The shooter drove to the school, walked up to the windows, according to authorities, was wielding a semi-automatic rifle, a shotgun, and a handgun, as well as carrying some form of smoke grenade, and then began firing through the windows of the church and striking the children who were praying within. 2 of them, 8 and 10 years old, were killed during the attack. 17 other people were injured. 14 of those were also just babies, just children, injured in that attack yesterday. A cowardly massacre, the New York Post says. Westman, 23 years old, just ahead of it, posted a series of twisted videos on YouTube, which included a manifesto, Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara confirming at a press conference. In one 20-minute video, Westman flips through the disturbing handwritten manifesto. Much of it is written in a homespun code that uses Cyrillic characters and English phonetic words. In the deranged writings, he gleefully fantasizes about being that, quote, scary, horrible monster standing over those powerless kids, and reverently confesses admiration for the 2012 Sandy Hook massacre. So this is a mentally ill person, someone who identifies as transgender. Now, this is, of course, only the recent such attack like this. We've had a lot of attacks in recent years by people who consider themselves to be transgender. In fact, there's the Libs of TikTok account documented some of this and capturing some of these awful moments. It's an epidemic. The Minnesota church shooting, of course, yesterday, trans. The Republican Party firebombing, remember that? Done by someone who was, quote, gender fluid. The Nashville shooter at the Covenant School, transgender. The Colorado Tesla arsonist, transgender. The Colorado Springs shooter, non-binary. The Aberdeen shooter, trans. The Denver school shooter, trans. The Iowa school shooter, trans or gender fluid. And the AMC movie stabber, transgender. As Libs of TikTok points out, are you starting to see a pattern here? It's an epidemic. And it's not just those events. You see one in there, Colorado Tesla arsonist. There were a bunch of Tesla terror attacks earlier this year generated by the left, conducted by people who were mentally ill, who consider themselves to be trans or non-binary or gender fluid. Those were the lion's share of the Tesla terror attacks committed by people with this utter mentally ill confusion about the status of their sex. We know of vegan cults of transgender people who've committed horrific acts of violence under the guise of, yes, being transgender. So this is a mental illness. And the left has for years said that what you need to do in the face of it, if someone emerges that says that, hey, I was born on the wrong body, what you need to do is indulge their descent into madness. In fact, parents are blackmailed into this belief, told that if you don't do it, your child will die of suicide. Well, what happened yesterday? The parents of this young man indulged his transgender fantasy, and then he went on not only to commit suicide, but in the process, take a bunch of children down with him. So it was a homicide, homicides and a suicide yesterday because nobody intervened. Nobody arrested his dissent. Nobody got him the help he deserved. Nobody got him in front of the people who could actually help him navigate out of this crisis. Instead, the crisis only became worse and ended up harming so many other people. There are so many obvious lessons here from yesterday's attack. One of them is stop indulging mental illness. Stop advancing it. Intervene and help. We have to commit people to medical institutions when they're in need of this. We have to stop demonizing interventions here. We have to restore the medical community to some sense of common sense. It is not appropriate to mutilate children inside of children's hospitals and call it health care. It is not appropriate to pump a human being full of hormones that have nothing to do with their actual sex and then be shocked when something horrific happens as a result of it. It is insanity at a cultural level that we've indulged this for so long. It has to stop. You want to stop violence? Stop making people more violent. One of the other lessons here is obvious. We've seen it before over and over and over again. We need good guys with guns. We are a great culture. America has had a great culture. We have a great history. We have a great constitution. We should live up to it. This country is built on self-reliance. No other country on the planet is like ours. We have a country that values the independence and sovereignty of the common man, of the American citizen. And a part of that is a respect for the Second Amendment, the ability to render a defense for yourself and your loved ones at your moment of need. There's an expression that we're always reminded of the truth of every time we see something like this happen, which is that when seconds count, the police are minutes away. In other words, that shooter was able to kill children and wound so many others within just seconds, and there were no police available yet. The first calls to the police were coming in as the shooting was occurring. It would take time for the cops to get there. They can't be there right away. Who is there to protect those children? Who is going to be the sheepdog to stand up and fight back? The majority of mass shootings, let me repeat this, the majority of would-be mass shootings that happen outside of so-called gun-free zones are stopped by good guys with guns. Nobody tells you that. I'm telling you that. I'm telling you that. John Lott and the Crime Prevention Research Center has been documenting this for years, finding out that over and over and over again, it's a good guy with a gun who stops shootings from becoming more horrific. In fact, the efficiency of good guys with guns is the reason you typically don't hear about so many of these stories for two reasons. One, the body count ends up being low, so it doesn't become a national news story. And two, and far more insidious, the media root against telling you these stories. They lie by omission. They don't want you to know that a good guy with a gun can put down a bad guy. In this location was also, I should emphasize, once again, a gun-free zone. It was a gun-free zone. And speaking of John Lott, here he is this morning. The Catholic school shooter in Minneapolis claimed in his manifesto that he would prefer to target a gun-free zone because the victims are defenseless. Quote, "That's why I and many others like schools so much." The shooter said this. The shooter revealed in his demented manifesto that the reason he chose the school was the vulnerability of the children in a gun-free zone. So we are called upon to protect our kids. That is one of our obligations. And no one was there to do that. We waited for the police to arrive. So that's the circumstance. Now, the reactions to this are pouring in from all over the place, including from the people who are supposed to be leaders in the state of Minnesota, instead who are selling out the very children who had their lives taken yesterday. This includes the Minneapolis mayor, a guy called Jacob Frey, who has demonstrated that he should be nowhere near the levers of power whatsoever. Jacob Frey yesterday was scolding Americans who resort to prayer in the wake of a shooting of Christians who were massacred while they were on their knees in pews. Here's Jacob Fry, again, the mayor of Minneapolis, right after the shooting, stepping up to a microphone and deciding that what he needed to do now was attack Christians. Look, cut one.
And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
You attack people for praying? The first response you have as the mayor of Minneapolis, these are supposed to be your people, your constituents. Your first response to is to attack prayer? You even said it in your answer that these children were praying inside of that church. Of course the nation would react with prayer. I've always been against the phrase thoughts and prayers because I think thoughts don't carry the weight that prayer does. Sure, you're in my thoughts and prayers, but it's the prayer that matters. It's the prayer that has value. And leave it to Democrats to attack religion and religious people for reacting in religious ways, for having some sense of eternity in the wake of a tragedy like this. Jacob Fry attacked the faithful yesterday. And he wasn't done yet. While he was attacking the faithful, he was embracing his own cruel, demonic religion. One that says that you are not born in a body made by God, that your body can be a mistake, that your mental illness should be valorized. And anyone who questions this is somehow engaging in blasphemy. Here's Jacob Fry yesterday condemning Americans for paying any attention to the shooter's mental illness in the wake of all of this. Cut two. Look at this.
And I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids.
Now you tell me what's more hateful. Let's go through this for a moment. He says you're being hateful if you dare focus on the mental illness of the killer here. What is more hateful, would you say? Handing a suicidal person a gun or getting them help? Exacerbating somebody's schizophrenia or getting them help? Making someone's depression worse or getting them help? Indulging someone's mental illness about the state of their very physical existence or getting them help? You tell me which path is more hateful. The mayor chooses the former path, which it turns out is the hateful path, as he projects hate onto you. He roots on the dissent of the mentally ill and then tells you that you have to join him in that, wield some sort of demented moral blackmail against you. No, I refuse. I'm not playing this stupid game with you. And of course, he heard the backlash from people like you and me. He heard it. And so what did he decide to do? Did he do some soul searching? Did he reconcile with the vile, disgusting garbage that he was spewing on television yesterday as parents were just trying to figure out where their children were, as families were being notified that their babies had been killed? No. No, in fact, he just went on CNN and doubled down. He went on CNN yesterday, last night, and immediately doubled down and attacked people for daring to say we should stop mentally ill people from killing us. Here's cut three. Here's Mayor Jacob Fry on CNN doing it again.
5 years ago was Robert, then a name change to Robin. Okay. This is being seized in all corners, as you can imagine, in all sorts of ways. And you know that, Mayor, and perhaps that's why when you spoke about this, so profoundly and powerfully as you are even here now. But when you spoke about this today publicly, you voiced concern for the transgender community, for the community overall. And obviously, you chose to do that in that moment because you thought it was important. And I wanted to give you a chance to say why you felt it was important to do that in that moment.
Look at him all down.
Obviously, I've heard about the rhetoric and the narrative that is being pushed out, but here's the thing. Anybody that is going to use this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any community has lost touch with a common humanity. We got to be operating not out of hate for any group, but out of a love for our children. That's where the focus needs to be right now.
Okay, that's enough out of this
for
guy.
our
So
kids.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. They don't want to make things better. You know, you hear from the left a lot. Oh, we have to do something. This can't happen anymore. We must do something. I'm here to tell you right now, the rest of us want to do something about this bullshit. We do not want these children dying in these churches. We do not want mentally ill people taking up arms against them. We don't want people to be told they were born in the wrong body, indulge their mental illness, and then watch as they go on a path of destruction that not only kills themselves but others. I don't want that anymore. I want to do something about that. And yet you are making excuses for that chaos. You are rooting that on. So what you've decided to do is maintain the dissent, to be a part of the status quo that's destroying our country, engaging us in civilizational decline, and I refuse to be a part of it. I want no part of that whatsoever. I believe in empathy towards my fellow man. I believe that if you're mentally ill, that someone should step in, and including and especially your parents. And we should not have cowardice in the face of this chaos, but instead strength. And where does that strength come from? It comes from being honest about what we're dealing. And instead, what's coming out of your mouth and the mouths of so many Democrats is a never-ending deluge of lies. So it is up to the rest of us to tell the truth. This Sunday, from every pulpit all across the country, Christian pastors, Catholic priests, everyone of faith should be standing up there and telling their flock that God created us man and woman. It is as straightforward as reading the very first book of the Bible. And when you say it, make sure people hear it. And when they hear it, if they're uncomfortable, it means they've been led astray. Take them through that. Navigate through that discomfort. Get to the truth so we can confront people like Jacob Fry and arrest the dissent of our culture. I've got a lot more on this. Jacob Fry's not the only one. We've got real poison that we need to address in this country, and we're going to do that today on Vince. All right, you already know the name. Blackout Coffee supports this program. Thank God for Blackout Coffee. They're wonderful. They're proudly the official coffee of all of us here at Silverlock, and there's a reason for that. This is bold, unapologetic, America First coffee, roasted fresh right here in the United States. It's not grocery store junk. Blackout Coffee delivers rich, high-quality roasts that actually taste like freedom. They do. And now you can set it and forget it with auto refill and recurring delivery. That means no more running out, no more watered-down backups, just your favorite roast, delivered fresh on your schedule. You can pick your favorite roast. Now, how often you want it delivered? Not only do you get a discount, but you also get double the rewards and free shipping to your doorstep. Blackout Coffee is great. I love my coffee black, and Blackout Coffee just tastes phenomenal. So I'm recommending it to you, too. You're going to love Blackout Coffee. Here's what you do. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince. That's VINCE, and get 20% off your first order. Whether you're into bold, dark roasts, flavored coffee, or even instant, Blackout's got your back. Real coffee, no compromise. Blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Get yours now. Our thanks to Blackout Coffee for being a great sponsor of this program. Okay. Jacob Fry is the awful mayor of Minneapolis. He's not alone in all of this. He, as well as all of these other lefties in Minnesota, have been completely screwing up their state and making it a safe haven. They call it a safe haven for out-of-control mental illness. Let's start with cut 4.
And I want all of you just to know exactly where we are as far as our neighbors go. Minneapolis will continue to be a safe haven for undocumented immigrants, for our trans community. Regardless of who you are or where you come from, Minneapolis is a place where you should be proud to call home.
You heard two things there. The same idiot mayor rooting on the idea that we will be a sanctuary for criminality and for mental illness. We won't stop it. We won't help our citizens. We won't clean up our community. I promise, he says, in words that are designed to sound like they're wonderful, that I will make my community worse. That's the message. Now, it's no wonder, of course, that people are rejecting Democrats by such huge margins. Democrat Party registration is collapsing in the United States. More and more people are calling themselves Republican. It's no wonder. But I don't want it to be this way. I don't want it to be this way. I hate seeing what's happening to America's cities and states that are run by Democrats. My fellow citizen lives in those states. I do not want this collapse. I want these people to leave. Go do something more useful. Like be a seat filler at an award show or something. But don't try and lead a community because you're leading it into the ground. And it's not just the mayor. Here's the Minnesota governor, Tim Walz. Tampon Tim Walz, as crazy as ever, saying very recently, this was in the DNC summer meeting, that we have to be a safe haven for mental illness. Cut 5, look.
Minnesota ranks the highest per capita for being a safe haven for transgender individuals in Minnesota. And can I just say, we can talk about economic growth and feeding children and growing the economy and creating jobs simultaneously with talking about everybody's human rights matters, and we shouldn't be demonizing that. You can do both.
Can't speak English, waves with two hands, roots on mental illness, and somehow he's the governor of a state. Somehow. Thank God he's not the vice president of the United States. Thank God the sanity of the American people prevailed in 2024 to prevent that awful thing from happening. Just imagine how much worse it would be now if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were in the White House. Our prayers were answered when President Trump returned, and not those guys. The Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, former congressman, Democrat, awful person, also saying that he wants to fight it out in court with the Trump administration to protect the abuse of children in the state of Minnesota. If you're in Minnesota right now, I got to say, I feel so sorry for you that you have to deal with this garbage, and I hope a better future is ahead for you. Listen to this. Cut 6. Here's the Attorney General.
Dude, 44 times, and we'll sue him 44 more and 44 more after that. And we have sued him for gender-affirming care. Yes, we are not going to scapegoat our transgender community. And we have sued him to stand up for medical research, National Institute.
I need people to understand what he's saying. We are going to fight for the continued abuse of children. We are going to fight for the continued descent into madness. And I don't want anybody to stop me. That's the position he's taking. And I see some people in the chat saying, oh, please don't show these guys anymore. Sorry, we can't look away. We can't look away at this. We need to confront this evil head on. No more excuses for this nonsense. No more just letting it slip past. No more letting it just hang out there to influence people. This needs to be put down. Because if it's not put down, guess who gets put down? Our children get put down in a church praying in Minneapolis on a Wednesday morning. This has to stop. The lieutenant governor of the state also shares this demonic view. Cut 7.
Because let's be clear, this is life-affirming and life-saving healthcare. When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them.
No. Evil.
That's what it means to be a good parent.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. No, it does. It does not mean that you accept every bad decision your child makes. By and large, the people who are telling you this are not even parents themselves, to be clear. So they have no idea what it means to be a parent. And they're taking out their frustrations about lacking children on the rest of us. That's part of this. But this whole thing that, raising a child means letting them do whatever they want and then obediently sitting back and funding their delusions? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Anyone who either had good parenting or who is exhibiting good parenting knows the way you handle things is you nip it in the bud when things are headed in the wrong direction. You need to be the guardrails for your child's upbringing. You need to help them take those steps down the path to their own improvement, their own flourishing towards, yes, to eternity. That's your job as a parent, to lead them in that direction. That's what the Catholic parents at Annunciation Catholic Church know, which is their job is to lead their children to God, not to let them wander off to the devil. And that's what the lieutenant governor of the state of Minnesota is advancing. So these Democrats need to be out of power. And there's, I think it's incumbent upon the rest of us, this in the do something attitude that people have after a shooting like this. I'm here to tell you that we need a national uprising against this, already beyond where we are. So many Americans agree on this issue, by the way. It's so clear. I mean, we've made such strides in reminding people that reality exists, that boys can't be girls, they can't compete in girls' sports, they shouldn't be in girls' locker rooms, and vice versa. We've made a lot of progress on this issue, but it is not over. It is far from over. There's a body count right now in Minneapolis, and I've got a lot more to deal with here with you, because it's not just the elected officials who are doing this; it's our media who are doing this, who are rooting this destruction on, or lying to you outright about what just took place yesterday in Minneapolis. Lying. And this audience, of course, knows better. To be clear, this is a media literate audience. You are aware of the nature of these lies. But the challenge we have is that there is a percentage of Americans, almost all of them who vote for Democrats, who are totally brainwashed by a legacy media who will relentlessly lie to them in the pursuit of power for their party, rather than tell them the truth so that we can grow as a country. More ahead on this Vince Show. I want to thank the great people at fastgrowingtrees.com for being a great sponsor of this program. Fall is planting season, and a lot of plants and trees actually do better when they're planted this time of year. But you've got to know where to start, and this is why I love fastgrowingtrees.com. It doesn't matter if you live in the sunny South or if the air is getting chilly where you are. Their plant experts can help you find the perfect fit for your space. They've got all the plants that your yard needs, like fruit trees and privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. You can order online and get your plants delivered directly to your door in just a few days without ever leaving home. This fall, they've got the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to this show get 15% off their purchase when using the code VINCE at checkout. That's 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com. Just use the code VINCE at checkout. Do what I did. I got Fast Growing Trees. I love my fast-growing trees, and my yard looks so much better as a result. You can benefit the same way I have. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com, use the code VINCE at checkout, get 15% off. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use VINCE to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. Thank you, Fast Growing Trees. Thank you also to the great people at Jacked Up Fitness who have improved my life a lot. More and more Americans are prioritizing their wellness and getting back in shape. But studies prove that strength training actually does so much more to help burn fat than cardio alone. That's true. You build muscle, you burn fat. I've been working with Don and the team over at Jacked Up Fitness for a couple of months now, and I got to say, it's just been great. And Jacked Up Fitness, these guys know what they're doing. They've got their all-in-one home gyms. They're already best in class. I've got one. I love it. And now their all-new X Series takes home fitness to the next level. The Power Rack Extreme Functional Trainer lets you do hundreds of exercises, everything you would do at the gym, right from your spare room or garage. Want more? Well, the Power Rack Pro X features a fully upgraded cable crossover system with articulating pulley arms for unlimited width combos, so you can hit every muscle group. And if you're new to this, no worries. They've got a free Get Jacked Up video program. You just press play and you follow along. No more excuses. We can do this together. Go to getjackedup.com, use the promo code Vince, and save 10%. That's getjackedup.com. Getjackedup.com. Okay. There's first of all, let me share with you some good news out of the media. I'd say not good news. The news is bad, but some honest coverage from the press. I think that's a good place to start. And this comes to us from Diana Nerozzi. She is a reporter for the New York Post. She's writing alongside a guy called Patrick Riley today. And Diana, just to be clear, is a woman I know well because she at one point was my White House correspondent at the Daily Caller. Super talented woman. And now she's at the New York Post doing good work there. And here's the headline on the piece. Minneapolis school shooter Robin Westman, formerly Robert until he got his official name changed from Minnesota, confessed that he was tired of being trans. Now, credit to the New York Post for saying he. Not everyone's saying he. He is correct. He was tired of being trans. Quote, I wish I never brainwashed myself. Transgender mass shooter Robin Westman confessed that he was tired of being trans and wished he had never brainwashed himself in his manifesto posted online before he slaughtered 2 children and wounded dozens more at that Minneapolis church. In a twisted handwritten journal that he shared on YouTube, Westman groaned about his long hair and his decision to transition. Quote, I only keep the long hair because it is pretty much my last shred of being trans. I'm tired of being trans, he wrote. I wish I was never brainwashed myself. That's according to a translation by the New York Post. There have been studies done on this issue, people who consider themselves to be transgender. A massive study out of the UK found this. Most people who say this grow out of it. Most people who say this are going through a phase, and they grow out of that phase, much like so many of us did some other kind of phase when we were teenagers. It's a phase. And here you have this now deceased young man indicating that he was, quote, brainwashed, that he was taken down a road that he regretted, that he was made to think that he was transgender. And you are not going to see coverage of this in the left-wing media. CNN is not going to spend any time on this. MSNBC, the New York Times, others, they're not going to spend time on this. In fact, they're going out of their way, even this morning, to lie to you about this. Look at this New York Times headline this morning. This is a real New York Times headline. As we speak this morning is the New York Times headline. Minneapolis suspect knew her target, but motive is a mystery. I'm sorry, what? Her target? This is a man. You're lying to us in the headline of the story. And motive is a mystery? It seems pretty clear to me that he was dead set on attacking a Catholic school and a Catholic church. The writings all over his guns and all over his manifesto make clear his hatred for Jesus Christ, his hatred for the kids who are in that church, the diagram that he drew of the church ahead of the attack. This was a bigoted, hateful, anti-Christian, anti-Catholic, anti-God attack. We know that. All of the available evidence points us in that direction. For instance, let me show you this. Here's some of the messages that the shooter left behind. Our friend Greg Price capturing some of these. Let me filter through some of this. There's a target of Jesus Christ with a crown of thorns on a shooting target, placed on the head of a shooting target. Look at this on my screen here. That's the image that the shooter captured. It was meant to target Christ himself. Here's another image written on the side of the magazine. Where is your God? An attack on faith. Here's another. Kill Donald Trump, the message says. Rip and tear. It also says on the magazine, which I understand. not really a Doom player, but I understand that apparently came from the Doom video game. Kill Donald Trump, rip and tear. And then it also says here, I'm the woker, as in like a play on the Joker. I'm the woker, baby. Why so queerious? So the message is clear. The guy wrote the messages all over his magazines and in his manifesto, and the New York Times is still scratching its head trying to figure out what's the motive here? What happened? Why did she do this, they say. And the lies by omission continue. Yesterday on ABC, there was a reporter by the name of Aaron Katursky who was relaying some of the information from what I just showed you, but doing it in such a completely disgusting and deceptive way that it resulted in this presentation on national television. Pay attention to where Aaron Katursky talks about President Trump's name being written on the guns. Here it is, cut 9, Aaron Katursky of ABC.
23-year-old Robin Westman was able to leave what police called a video manifesto that they're now going through to try and establish motive. We've also been going through it and can tell you there are crude diagrams of the church. There are also photos of the weapons, and they include all sorts of writings, the names of past mass shooters, criticism of Israel, the name of President Trump written on the guns. There are also racial slurs, nihilistic statements, all painting the picture of a disturbed individual who carried out this mass shooting.
You see what he did with the list? You see what he did as he presented that? He said there were the names of past shooters. There was the name of President Trump, all on these guns. He was implying to the audience that the shooter was a fan of President Trump. Oh, his name was on there like it was some sort of NASCAR sponsorship on the side of the gun. No, the message that this insane person left behind, fellas, pull up my screen again, is kill Donald Trump. That's the message that was written. And it wasn't just that one. Here's another one. Kill Trump now, it says on the message. Those are the messages. The ABC reporter said something that was accurate, kind of. Donald Trump's name appeared, but it was such a dishonest presentation of the facts that it's a lie by omission. It left in the impression of the viewer that this guy was somehow a fan of Donald Trump when he desired the death of the President of the United States. That's our media. That's the way they, and to be clear, that particular tactic, that subtle little deception that is implanted into a presentation of what they call the news, is the way that the media so frequently mislead the public. They tell you some sort of partial truth in the service of prejudicing your judgment in the opposite direction to make you think that it's Democrats who are right, Republicans who are wrong. That's what's being accomplished here. And it's disgraceful that Aaron Katursky would do that. And that was a choice. Katursky knew what he was doing. He should have said that it was an anti-Trump message, a message that desired the death of the President of the United States. He didn't say that. He merely said that President Trump's name appeared on the gun. How completely dishonest. He wasn't alone in the deceptions yesterday. CNN's Jake Tapper pretended during a segment on his network that the shooter was female. Cut 10. Watch this.
The Minneapolis Star-Tribune, just as another piece of the puzzle as to who the shooter was, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune says, according to court records, because there's been some confusion about what the shooter's name was.
Yes.
Robin Westman's mother applied to change her child's name in 2019. It was, at one point, Robert Paul Westman.
Correct.
But since she identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification, was underage, it's now Robin Westman.
She now identifies as a female. That's a couple things when you hear people say that. One, it's malice if you're trying to advance the destruction of these people. And at the very least, it's cowardice. It's just complete cowardice in the face of a corporation who's going to hurt you if you tell the truth. So Jake Tapper chose cowardice yesterday and presented a male as a female, despite the fact that the villain of our story is the guy. You owe him nothing. You owe him no courtesies whatsoever, including these delusional courtesies of calling men by different pronouns from he and him. It's so crazy. But that Tapper chose the cowardly route yesterday. And then there were people who were on television who had no idea whatsoever how guns work. There was a CNN reporter yesterday, Cut 13, who once again spoke very confidently about the weaponry without any idea whatsoever about how guns actually operate.
Seemed like a rifle, he said, a semi-automatic rifle, and it went on for several minutes.
Right, and look, that's not uncommon as well. These things can shoot dozens of bullets, in just one trigger pull, right? And so what happens in this case is sometimes they have enough time to reload. It's one of the most horrific things for students to be sitting.
The stupidity. And they say that with such confidence. Oh, these things can shoot dozens of bullets with one trigger pull. You know literally nothing. And yet you sit there and you say these things and you pretend like you have some sort of expertise on the subject. You know literally nothing about this. What he's describing is of course, not at all what occurred. What he's describing would be a fully automatic weapon. If a trigger was pulled and the rounds keep firing through it while the trigger is depressed. That's not what happens. The rifle in question was a semi-automatic rifle. In other words, one trigger pull per shot. They just make it up. They just completely make it up. And then their ignorant audience nods along and says, oh my goodness, I can't even believe that's real. That's because it's not real. They just make it up. He wasn't alone in making it up yesterday. Senator Amy Klobuchar, also of Minnesota, went on television and then also lied. Here she is, Cut 12, saying, we've been trying to get these automatic weapons off the streets.
It, of course, makes me think about guns and all the work we've done to ban these automatic rifles and to do something when it comes to the background checks and everything, and we keep getting thwarted. We were able to pass a limited measure on a bipartisan basis, but not enough to stop something like this. And it just makes you think about that as well without knowing the details about how he got that gun, if the gun was legal, what kind of gun it was. But it was clearly one of these automatic rifles to be able to shoot that many kids so fast.
She said, I don't know the details, but it was clearly one of those automatic rifles. You don't know the details. You don't know anything, actually. It was not an automatic rifle, you moron. And then for her to say, hey, we've been trying to fix this. We've been trying to get control of this, stop this, expand background checks, on and on. Let me ask you a really basic question, Amy Klobuchar. Do you think people who think they're born in the wrong body are suffering from a mental illness? Yes or no? She'll say no. No, it's not a mental illness. Would you want to keep people with mental illness from getting guns? Yeah, I do. What about being transgender? Is that a mental illness? No. That's normal. It's not normal. It's mental illness. And the left's position is we need to arm transgender people. Arm them. That's actually the position of the left. What I mean by that is whenever we talk about the United States military, have you noticed how frequently the left's position is that we need transgender people carrying actual weapons of war in the military and into combat? You've got to have transgender people at war, carrying guns. That is the position of the left. That's the position they take. Not that, hold on a second, this is somebody who's deeply imbalanced, somebody who has a mental instability. We should be caring for them, not arming them. That's crazy. Don't do that. No, the left's position, let's arm the mentally ill. That's the position they've taken. And then when you see something like this play out, they lie. And so then we got to ban these weapons. They're automatic weapons, she says. But in the end, so let's just pretend for a moment that I presented a piece of legislation to Amy Klobuchar. And I said, okay, let's ban, you just said automatic weapons. Let's ban automatic weapons. Now, that's true. There are some people who own fully automatic weapons in the United States. They're few and far between, difficult to get. But if we were to ban fully automatic weapons, what impact would that have on the arsenal that Americans own across the country? Almost none. Almost everything that's owned by civilians in the United States of America is semi-automatic or single action. And so The idea that this would have any dent whatsoever, it's not true. It's like ridiculous. It's just completely ridiculous. And that's not enough for her. She doesn't want to ban fully automatic guns. She wants to take all of them. In other words, she wants to deprive your ability to stop the transgender killer from murdering your children. That's what she wants to do. That is the effect of her pursuit. Let's disarm law-abiding citizens so that the only people who can fire are the bad guys. Now, that is not the position they want to take for their own armed guards. Hakeem Jeffries yesterday, Chuck Schumer yesterday, all of these idiots, Tim Walz, they're all calling for disarming American citizens in the wake of this. They're exploiting the crazy person who they indulged in order to say that sane, well-adjusted American citizens should be disarmed. But they don't want to get rid of their security. Tim Walz doesn't want to get rid of the Minnesota State Troopers who protect him. Hakeem Jeffries doesn't want to get rid of the Capitol Police officers who protect him. Chuck Schumer doesn't want to get rid of the Capitol Police officers who protect him. Up in Illinois, J.B. Pritzker doesn't want to get rid of the Illinois State Troopers who protect him. No, that's not the plan. The plan is to disarm you and to retain a level of protection that only elected officials are entitled to. That's their plan. How about no? That's not going to work. I deserved to be just as well protected as you are. It's as simple as that. And I can take that matter into my own hands. So they don't know what they're talking about. They make the mentally ill worse. And then when the mentally ill do something awful, they target you for disarmament. Am I getting the math right on this? Because that seems to be the pattern every single time this happens. Every single time this happens. And so, yeah, there are a lot of lessons from this. There are a lot of lessons from this. One is stop indulging the mentally ill. Stop making it worse. Two is allow American citizens to carry. American citizens are responsible for their own defense. They will do well. They do well when called upon to protect themselves, their families, and their community. It is their Second Amendment right. Stop trampling upon it. Another is we need a culture of courage, whether it's from the pulpit or inside of our homes. The reality with the young man who took those shots yesterday, killed those children, is that it wasn't just his own dissent, and it wasn't just people like Tim Walz and Jacob Fry who were rooting on his destruction. It was his own parents. His mother filled out the forms requesting the name change in 2019. And this is a family that attended that Catholic church and school. They went to Annunciation. The mother worked there for nearly a decade. And I don't know her, and I suspect she's going through a living hell right now, looking back on all of the decisions that she made, what led up to all of this, the role she may have had in all of it. I'm sure that she's going through that right now, and I wouldn't want to be there where she is. But it should be a warning sign for the rest of us that the road to hell can be paved with good intentions. It very often is. That she was very likely convinced by the culture that the right thing to do for her distressed son was to allow him to descend into his delusions, that somehow this would be the morally justified thing to do. It is not. It is not. As a parent, you have a duty to intervene. You have a duty to rescue your child, to put them back on the right path, not to enable their destruction. And unfortunately, they chose the wrong path. They did. And so the lesson here for the rest of us is mind your children. Remember your role. Remember what it means to be a parent. Intervene when necessary. Help keep them on the right path, even when it's uncomfortable. Our society depends on it, and their fate in eternity depends on it. All right, we'll get back to this. There are a lot of lessons here. The media has been completely out of control, but I do want to address some other quick things with you amidst all of this. In Washington, D.C., crime has improved. The crime situation has improved so dramatically by the President of the United States intervening and taking over law enforcement that even the Democrat mayor of the city is now singing President Trump's praises. And this is causing a lot of anger among Democrats who have a cult-like adherence to attacking Trump at all costs. It's not about the well-being of the citizens. It's about demonizing Trump and trying to figure out a way to claw their way back to power. But Mayor Muriel Bowser, to her credit, in Washington, D.C. yesterday, was not playing that game. She wasn't adhering to the rules of the cult. And she said out loud that things have actually improved in the nation's capital. Take a look, cut 11. Here's Mayor Muriel Bowser.
And we greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. But for carjackings, the difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer.
An 87% reduction in carjackings. And not only are those the numbers on carjackings, but check out this document. Here's a document that Mayor Bowser put out yesterday. She disseminated this document to the press to give them a clearer understanding of how all of this works. And in every single criminal category, you are watching as crime is going down. Look at the numbers here. Homicides down by 38%. Sex abuse is down by 44%. Robbery, 62%. All violent crimes are down by 45% in the nation's capital. These are massive improvements. Carjackings, of course, are down by 87%. And then if you look at the actual arrests, calls for service, and firearm recoveries, that's down at the lower portion of this document. Look at these numbers. The arrests have gone up in the city by 20%. So crime has bottomed out, and the arrests have gone up, meaning there's a relationship between law enforcement and whether or not people are committing crimes. And the calls for service are up 18%. This number, let me just emphasize something about that number, 18% calls for service are up. This is the symptom of a city where law enforcement is now doing its job. Any of us who've ever lived in a community, and perhaps you have, as a military brat, we moved from community to community. We experienced different things. But I remember as a kid at one point, we had a bike stolen. We had a bike stolen from our property. And we called the police and we said, hey, a bike was stolen. And the answer we got back from the cops was, sorry, there's really not much we can do about it. Better luck next time. And in fact, that sort of is the message that a lot of these left-wing cities have been projecting to their citizens. Sorry, not much we can do about this. Better luck next time. Or if they do take people into custody, they're right back out on the street in no time. And people become conditioned to the fact that there are no consequences, and calling the cops will result in nothing but hassle, especially in crime-ridden communities where you'll get a reputation for being a snitch and no one is held to account for the criminality. So what's the upside in calling the police exactly? So as law enforcement goes up, so do phone calls to 911. People are making calls because they credibly believe that there will be consequences for the actions of criminals now. That number is up 18%. And they're also recovering a lot of illegal firearms in the process here in Washington, D.C. Now, Bowser, I got to say, in her party, that takes an act of courage to say that out loud, to admit that President Trump did something good. Stack that to the list of victories. And she's already being attacked today by the D.C. City Council in unison, who are all coming out attacking her. How dare you say something nice about the President of the United States? This is a nightmare to have President Trump take over law enforcement in the nation's capital. No, it's the opposite. It's a dream come true. And every city with a crime problem should only wish to have that kind of improvement. And I hope President Trump can help us navigate towards fixing it. I'm rooting him on. I'm happy about his presidency. And yet another victory to stack to the pile. All right. Another big show. Thank you for being here with me. I know it's a heavy show when we have to talk about the wake of a tragedy, but we've got to come out of it with some better lessons. I want this country to be great again. That's all I'm rooting for, and I know you are too. This is the best audience in media. Thank you for being with me here today on Vince. I've got the big national radio show coming up, 12 to 3 Eastern. You can find that at thevinceshow.com. Check your local listings, or just check it out with me here on rumble.com/Vince. I do it live. We do it live. Great to have you with us, as always. Up next on Rumble, Steven Crowder.